Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review today. This time I will be talking about The Mask of Silver by Rosemary Jones. This is part of the new Arkham Horror book collection that has been released slowly over the span of either last year or this year. Now, this is a really interesting book. I'm going to be looking at it from three different perspectives. I'm going to look at it, how it stands up as a standalone novel. I'll be looking at how it works as a novel based in the Cthulhu mythos. And I'll be also looking at it as a novel and how it works based on the Arkham Horror series of board and card games released by Fantasy Flight Games, which include, of course, Arkham Horror, 2nd and 3rd edition, Eldritch Horror, Elder Sign, Arkham Horror, the Living Card Game, and so on. So, let's get right into another episode of... Okay, so let's start by looking at this in terms of just a standalone novel. If you are not familiar with the Cthulhu mythos, and you certainly don't have to be to enjoy this book, it still works really, really well. There really is only one reference to anything mythos related, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But what I do want to go over is how well the author has integrated realism into the story. The basic premise is there is this director who makes what he calls nightmare pictures. This is in the 1920s, so it's still the era of silent film. He has the actors and his main leading lady that he always works with in all of his pictures. Her sister is the costume designer. She is of Chinese American descent, as is her sister, but her sister looks more like American than Chinese, and therefore she can pass off. But this woman is more Chinese than American, and so obviously is never going to work in movies and whatnot. But she makes the props and helps her sister out wherever she can. Now, this director, Sidney Fitzmaurice, wants to make a new film, and he wants to shoot it in Arkham. You don't need to know what Arkham is or anything like that to enjoy this book at all, which I thought was really, really good. But the realism that the author uses here, there are references to old Hollywood that really make you, if you know those references, of course, really elevates the book up another notch. The director is constantly talking about Wallace Worsley, who was the director of the 1923 silent film version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame with Lon Chaney. The main character, the narrator of the story, references Anna Wong, who she says in the novel itself, she says that Anna Wong was trying to get out of being stereotyped and was thinking of turning down the character of Lotus Blossom in her latest picture, but she ended up getting cast anyway, which is, of course, a reference to the film Shame, directed by Emmett Flynn, from 1921, in which Anna Wong is cast as the titular character Lotus Flower. There's references to the producer of the film worrying about William Hayes, who was the gentleman who was hired by all the film studios to basically put a stop to Fatty Arbuckle getting any more movies out there as a way of kind of protecting the morality of Hollywood. Of course, the Fatty Arbuckle scandal, he was accused of murdering a woman named Virginia Rapp, who died of a ruptured bladder, and people said it was because Fatty Arbuckle kind of crushed her in a drunken rampage. But of course, he was found innocent after his third trial. But Hayes wanted to basically block all of his pictures from ever being made and ever being shown on the screen. It's references like this that really kind of elevates this book up there and kind of set it in some form of realism, which I found very, very refreshing. So they go to Arkham to shoot this picture, and of course, bad shit goes down. So, as a standalone novel, you don't have to be familiar with the Cthulhu mythos, and you don't have to be familiar with Arkham Horror. It works, and it works really, really well. But if you are familiar with the Cthulhu mythos, does this book do a good job of putting it in that H.P. Lovecraft world? Kind of. There is one reference in the book which is a throwaway reference to a short story by Robert Chambers, not even by H.P. Lovecraft, called The King in Yellow, although, as we know it now, The King in Yellow kind of has been absorbed into this idea of the Cthulhu mythos. H.P. Lovecraft was a very generous writer when it came to his creations. He often let other writers play with his characters and his gods and in his world and things like that. So there's a reference to the twin comets, Camilla and Casilda, that are from the story The King in Yellow. Although at no point in this book is the King in Yellow ever mentioned. At no point in this book is the god Hastur ever mentioned, or anything like that. So, with that said, if you know about these mythos characters, it works, and it works very, very well. If you don't, it doesn't take anything away from the story, which is fantastic. I think the author was really trying to show that you don't need to have this broad scope and understanding of what constitutes the Cthulhu mythos in order to enjoy this book. There is enough there to keep you guessing and to keep you on your toes, and it's very well written and it's very well done. I would say that this is a mythos book if you know the Cthulhu mythos. If you don't know the Cthulhu mythos, it's not really a Cthulhu mythos book. It's just a really great story. Now, how does it fit into the Arkham Horror franchise? I was going into this book a little bit worried that they were going to have characters from the games as the narrator or as the main characters in the story, and I was happy to see that it wasn't the case. We got a whole new cast of characters, whole new group of people to love, whole new group of people to hate, and they're all written very, very well. But there is this underlying idea that Arkham is a shitty town, and that there are people in this town who are looking out for it, people in this town who are protecting it. The very same feeling you get when you play Arkham Horror 2nd Edition or Arkham Horror the Living Card Game, Elder Sign. Not so much Eldritch Horror, because Eldritch Horror is like a world expanding board game, not necessarily set in one town. And of course, Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. I know that's going to be a little bit controversial for some people, but I happen to enjoy the game, so I'm throwing it there in the list. That doesn't mean that some of your favorite characters don't show up. There's a fantastic scene where they're filming in the woods, and they come across Ashcan Pete and his dog Duke, which, if you've played the Arkham games, you'll know exactly who Ashcan Pete is. At Velma's Diner, one of the waitresses ends up quitting. She's a throwaway character who just makes a racial slur, and then you kind of never see her again, so it doesn't really matter. But after she quits, basically the owner of the diner, pardon me, oh, sorry about that. I just got my first COVID shot. My head's a little bit addled. manager of the diner, I should say, not the owner. The owner's Velma. The manager of the diner says that they just got a new waitress in who's doing really well, goes by the name of Agnes, which, as you all know, Agnes is a character from Arkham Horror. You can, I believe she comes in the starter set of Arkham Horror, the living card game. So there are references to the Arkham Horror files that Fantasy Flight Games produces, and they're done very well. I cheered a little bit when Ashcan Pete showed up. I wish he had more to do in the book. I think he's a fantastic character. So, and the little reference to Agnes at the end was really, really good. So, as an Arkham Horror, as part of the Arkham Horror franchise by Fantasy Flight Games, yep, it works. All in all, I thought The Mask of Silver was a fantastic book. And I'm saying this because I love old Hollywood. I teach old Hollywood. I understood a lot of the references that a few people might not. Doesn't take anything away from the book, mind you. And I look forward to reading more of the Arkham Horror series of novels. So, will I recommend this? Of course. If you can, pick it up. Really, really fucking good book. Oops, I said a bad word. Now, I will be putting up maybe another gameplay video in the future. My next book review is actually going to be a review of a series of books. So that's not going to be coming out for a little while. I also want to do a video on magic systems within fantasy literature. I think that a lot of people might be turned off some types of fantasy literature based on the idea of the magic system or the religious kind of system that is in place in the various fantasy worlds. So I want to do a short video on that, which you will see coming up in the future. But until that time, I'm going to go and eat some steak. You're all going to go and read a fucking book, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.